wanna know my occupation? I get paid to rock the nation. Roland.
Hold it now.
Where you at? Where are you, Roland Martin?
Leaving about. Say it again.
I said you're behind that preposition.
Where you at? That always bugs you, doesn't it, Sid?
Yeah, well, you know.
My mom used to say that all the time.
Where are you, Roland?
In Buffalo. Finished up at Advocacy College last night. I had a great time here with the students of Black History Month. And so on my way to Ithaca, New York, to interview Dorothy Cotton, one of Dr. King's lieutenants in the civil rights movement. And she was the highest-ranking woman in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So she rarely talks, and so looking forward to that conversation. Tom, all across the country, immigration has been a critical issue. But when we talk about immigration, we really don't talk about Black immigrants who come to this country. So yesterday, a number of African-American leaders which went to Capitol Hill to address the issue, praying outside of Speaker Paul Ryan's office. Several of them got arrested. One of the folks, Tamika Mallory, of course, co-organizer of the Women's March, she joins us right now. Tamika, how you doing?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning,
Hey,
Roland.
Tamika, how you doing?
How y'all doing?
Oh, how you doing?
Yeah.
Great. Doing well.
Good.
So, of course, you are not. It's not unfamiliar territory for you. Being arrested, fighting for critical issues. So, what you really have been focused on this notion of Black immigrants and trying to get African Americans to understand that this is not just a Latino thing. That you have brothers and sisters who are from different countries who are impacted by this immigration policy of Donald Trump and Republicans in the House and Senate.
Well, absolutely. I've been working with a group called UndocuBlack. They are a group of undocumented young people out of D.C., and, I received some information from them a few weeks ago when I have to be very honest and say I wasn't 100% focused on immigration other than, talking about it sort of in the abstract, but not really focused on how our people are impacted by this. And as I was having a conversation with this gentleman, Jonathan, he was explaining the impact on African Americans, and looking at the numbers. First of all, without a Clean Dream Act, which is the number one demand that most groups have, at least 60,000 Black people, Black immigrants, could be impacted or will be impacted by us not having a Clean Dream Act, and then ultimately people being deported from this country. And also, you have two other programs. One is called TPS, and that program deals specifically with Haitians and people from Black countries or countries where Black descendants come from. And that program is really under attack right now as well, TPS, which is the Temporary Protective Status program. And then you have another program that deals with visas, and that specifically is a program that impacts people coming from Libya. If those programs end, you have maybe about 200,000 people in total that could be impacted by losing those types of programs, which the Trump administration is very focused on. So I don't claim to know everything about the Black immigration issue or immigration in general, but what I do know is that where we have privilege, which means that I am not going to be deported if I'm arrested or if I do anything to put my body on the line, I have to actually use that in order to help other Black people. Wherever we see Black people in trouble, it is incumbent upon all of us to stand up and make sure that they don't allow this conversation about immigration not to include our people. I think the last thing that is super important is obviously we've seen that ICE, this agency, has been going around, Amtrak trains, knocking on home doors and really invading people's privacy and deporting people. We know what happens when Black folks come into contact with the criminal justice system, and we cannot sit by and watch that happen, because you'll start to see more of the Eric Garners and all of the different names that we call, and we have to put a stop to that now. So we went to Paul Ryan's office to tell him that enough is enough and that we need a Clean Dream Act passed.
And they called the police on you.
But
so you asked if they called the police.
And,
yes,
and so that was that the extent of their response to you?
Well, actually, Paul Ryan's folks locked the door and didn't open it. So we stayed outside his office and we prayed. But, ironically, when we were taken to the facility where they, take you to process you, we walked in and there were at least 40 nuns, white women, that were there who had been arrested as well. They had gotten arrested in the rotunda doing some protesting around DACA as well. So this issue is so big, as you said, Roland. There's so many people focused on it, but they locked the white ladies up. So I guess if they locked them up, can't stop them from locking up black folks for sure.
Wow, yeah, that's messed up.
I've actually covered this issue for years, and one of the things that I told Latino activists that they needed to expand this idea to understand that it simply did not affect them. And one of the things that jumps out that you mentioned Haiti, you mentioned Libya, we're talking about people in Bermuda. We're talking about people who are from other West Indian countries, other African nations who are impacted. We spoke at the visa program. In fact, that was one point where some Democrats were agreeing with Trump who wanted to get rid of that visa program, but the Congressional Black Caucus was adamant that program not be ended because they understood that it specifically was important to those black countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And Congresswoman Yvette Clarke hosted us yesterday as the congressional member to bring us to the Hill. And she basically had a session where they explained the danger to black immigrants particularly. And, the reality is that our issue in terms of black people is like non-existent. No one is really talking about it. And that's the reason why we went to the Hill to bring attention to it, because it's almost, if you think about the amount of times that you've talked about immigration and this particular issue around DACA, you will probably admit that you've talked about it from a prism of, sort of Mexican people and Latino people of Latino descent. But we almost never talk about, black folks. And we want to be clear that this doesn't mean that we want a clean dream act just for black people, because, ignorant trolls on social media will say, well, what about, this is an all immigrants issue. Of course, all immigrants matter, but you can't say all until we ensure that black immigrants are important as well. So that is the work that we are faced with at this time.
And one of the sad things, of course, is that you have these other countries, Sudan and others, well, there are folks there who are helping America, helping the military when it comes to fighting ISIS, fighting terror, and then they're being specifically targeted by Donald Trump. They're saying, wait a minute, how are we helping America when it comes to fighting terrorism? And we're supposedly partners, but now all of a sudden you want to tell people from our countries they can't come to the United States.
Absolutely. Isn't that the American way? We take and try not to give as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And just another reason for people who are registering to vote and voting, and because Paul Ryan is up for re-election.
Right.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Tamika,
all right.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Keep up the great
Thanks
work,
for having
Tamika.
me on.
Yeah,
Take
Tamika.
care. Love you all.